So a few weeks ago, I did a video on 5 things in SEO that don't really matter. And that's because I see so many bloggers wasting so much time on these little things that just don't matter for SEO. Now, on the flip side, I thought it would be a good idea to do a video on 5 things in SEO that actually do matter, the most important things in SEO. Now, before we dive in, 2 quick caveats. Number 1, you can call these ranking factors, you can call them success factors. I don't really care. There are some people on Twitter who get a little anal about exact verbiage around SEO. So whatever you want to call these, call them what you want. Number 2, this assumes that your site is indexable and crawlable in Google, right? Obviously, if your site is not indexed in Google, then you need to work on that first. All right, so number 1 is your niche. What niche are you in? Some people are going to say this is not an SEO factor, and that's fine. I don't really care. But the niche that you're in is the most important thing when it comes to ranking in Google. And more specifically, how wide have you gone in your niche versus how narrow? And number 2, how competitive is your niche, okay? Having a defined, somewhat narrow niche 100% helps ranking in Google, and that's because it all comes down to relevance, okay? Relevance is arguably the most important thing when it comes to SEO, and that ties, again, directly to your niche. And what I mean by this is that, is your niche relevant to the keywords that you're going after, right? I have a few niche sites. One of them is in the bad credit niche, and that is my defined niche. Google knows my site is all about bad credit and credit scores, right? And so every time I go for a keyword that's related to bad credit, Google can associate, well, Mike's niche is bad credit and these keywords are bad credit related, right? So they kind of put those two things together. So niching down definitely makes SEO easier. Again, another example would be maybe the golf niche. If you have a blog or a niche site all about golf, right? So every article you publish on your site are golf tips, how to swing a club or whatever. I'm not a golfer. The best gear for golf, right? When you're just consistently covering your niche in terms of the content that you're creating, Google starts to see you kind of as an authority, as a niche expert. So niching down definitely helps. And I think it's really the most important part of ranking in SEO. It's not a direct ranking factor, right? It's not in the algorithm, but that relevance is so important. Now, I will say it is possible to rank a much broader website, okay? Bigger lifestyle sites. You look at huge sites like The Spruce, who are covering all types of sub niches. So it's definitely possible to rank a wider site. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that it takes a lot longer to rank and get traffic and make money from that type of site. And B, it takes a lot more authority, a lot more backlinks, which we'll talk about in a second. All right, so number 2 is content quality. How good is your content? Now, I understand that people are sick of hearing create great content, write epic content, because there's nothing very specific in there. So I want to kind of narrow down this point a little bit, and that's creating content that satisfies user intent, okay? In other words, what I want you to do before you start to write a post, maybe you've got a keyword identified, I want you to think about why someone is typing that keyword into Google. What is the intent of the user? What do they expect to find on the other end of that Google search, right? That's user intent. And we need to match our content, right? The subject of our content, the format of our content to that user intent. We have to marry those things together. Now, if you think of an example like, let's say the keyword, it's a broad keyword, cold brew coffee, okay? What is the intent behind that keyword? If I'm typing that search into Google, what am I as the user expecting to find on the other end of that search? Is it an article about the health benefits of cold brew coffee? Is that why I'm searching for that keyword? Is it a list post of different coffee recipes, 23 coffee recipes to try at home? Or is it just an individual recipe post, right? The best cold brew coffee recipe you can try, okay? Think about the intent, the different types of content that can be created around every single keyword. Now, the intent for cold brew coffee, obviously, someone wants a recipe, right? How do I make cold brew coffee? What's the best recipe? And that's kind of obvious. But if you went and somehow created an article thinking, people want to read about the health benefits of cold brew coffee, you'll never rank for that head term cold brew coffee, because that's not the intent behind the keyword, right? If you write the wrong type of post that does not match the intent, you're not going to rank. So user intent, or creating content that matches user intent, is number 2. All right, number 3 is EAT. Now, again, whether you want to call this a direct Google ranking factor, I don't really care. EAT is super, super important to ranking in Google. Now, let me read a quote here from Google themselves, right? They're saying, our ranking system does not identify the intent or factual accuracy of any given piece of content. However, it is specifically designed to identify sites with high indicia, and I'm going to mispronounce that, of expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Okay, so this is a Google document specifically around misinformation. And what they're saying is our algorithm, our systems can't really identify factual accuracy. So instead of looking for that, what they're looking for are sites and authors that have a high EAT. And for this reason, EAT is super, super important. Now, I will say, and this is kind of good news, is it depends on what niche you're in, right? It always comes back to niche. So if you're in the health niche and you're writing about cancer and all these, medical conditions, and you're giving out health advice, right? Obviously, that's a high EAT niche. Either you or your writers need to be credentialed, need to be experts, need to have authority around those health topics, because they're very, very important topics, right? So EAT in a niche like health is paramount, okay? Now, the good news is that not every niche needs a high amount of EAT. And this makes sense logically, and I think Google refers to this as everyday expertise. Now, if you think about a niche like paintball, maybe you have a niche site in the paintball niche, giving tips on how to do paintball, where to play paintball, paintball products, that's obviously not as high of an EAT niche as health, right? It's just a hobby. It's just people going out and playing paintball. So in that scenario, you could have what Google calls, again, everyday expertise. Maybe you've been playing paintball for 10 years and you own all of this gear and you know everything about paintball. So you're qualified in that way to give advice for paintball. So EAT is incredibly important, but there is kind of a shifting line on how important it is depending on what niche you're in. All right, number 4 are backlinks. And let me say, this is not really in any specific order. Some people would say backlinks are still the most important ranking factor, while other YouTube channels might say that backlinks are a total waste of time. So my take on it is that links are still incredibly important to ranking in Google, and therefore link building is still incredibly important to Google. Now, why is that the case? Let's just forget about the algorithm and all of Google's systems. Let's think about this logically, right? When you're creating a new blog or a new niche site and you're creating content, right? You have control over basically every other thing on your site. Every other thing that we're talking about in this video, you have control over what niche you go after. You have control over the type of content that you create, the quality of the content that you create. You have control over working on your EAT. All of that stuff is 100% in your control. except for backlinks. Okay, when you're building high quality, I'm talking about real backlinks, you do not have 100% control of those links. If anything, maybe you have like 5 or 10%. But because of that, because backlinks are out of our control, right? Because of that, I still believe they're, one of the most important ranking factors, because we can't game the system. We don't have full control over links. And again, I'm not talking about paid spammy links. I'm talking about real backlinks from real sites, right? Other websites have control on whether we get that link. We do not have control, right? Other websites need to voluntarily link out to you in order to get that link. And for that reason, when you just, again, think about it logically, we don't have control over the links. And for that reason, Google will always have links as a ranking factor. Looking at some of the links that I've gotten to one of my niche sites, I've worked hard to get all of these links right here. These are high DR links from huge branded websites, and that was done through quote unquote link building. So no, link building is not worthless. No, link building is not a waste of time. It's still incredibly important for SEO. All right, number 5, I'm calling user experience. And now this can encompass a lot of different things, but what I want you to think about is, how does your website present itself to people when they land on it from Google, whether that's on desktop or on their phone, right? If I'm Googling something on my phone and I come to your website, what is my experience as a reader? Now, again, this can cover a lot of things. Page speed, right? People think page speed is like the most important thing. I have different opinions on that, but I do think page speed is somewhat important, and it's definitely important when it comes to user experience. How fast does your site load when I pull your site up from Google? Does your site look like a real website, or is it kind of a spammy looking site from like 2016, one of those spammy affiliate sites? Or does it look like a nerd wallet? Does it look like the Spruce, right? You can tell certain sites give off that feel of being a real site, where other sites look, I don't know, kind of spammy. Along those same lines, is your site just plastered all over with ads and annoying affiliate links, right, where you can't even read the content? Or is it at least somewhat enjoyable reading user experience? If you have ads on your site, that's totally fine. Mediavine, AdThrive, great ad networks that will put, frankly, a decent amount of ads on your site. There's no way around that. And Google understands that websites monetize with ads. So ads are fine to a degree. Just don't have it above the fold. Don't block your content with your ads, and so on and so forth. Is your content easy to read? Again, on a mobile device? Do you have short paragraphs? Do you have big text? Do you have bullet points and tables and photos and graphics and videos and all of these things to break up your text to make it easy to navigate, again, especially on your phone? Because when someone lands on your site, we want them to stay on your site. And a big part of that is the way that you present your content. Okay, so user experience, super important for SEO. All right, guys, do me a favor. If you enjoyed that video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and let me know below, what do you think are the most important parts or the most important factors for ranking in Google? Thanks, guys.